Yes. In our earlier session, we were discussing regarding strategy and the difference between policy, strategy, and that of tactics. In this session, we shall try to know how has been the evolution of strategy from its inception. Now, there are different authors and different management thinkers who have contributed for this particular discipline of knowledge. Now, to speak about the evolution, you know, now over the past years, there are many authors who have discussed this concept of strategy, and they have given different types of approaches relating to what we call as strategy today. However, we should always remember that this particular discipline, it is still young, it is still evolving. It is not something like economics which can be defined in detail and that it has been studied over a century or two. Now, this is a very new discipline and it is still young and evolving. Now, there are some of the authors who have laid the foundation of, the concept, and they have given different definition of strategy. So, if we have to pick some of the major contributors, it starts with Alfred D. Chandler, Kenneth Andrews, Igor Ansoff, William F. Gluck, Henry Mintzberg, and Michael E. Porter. Okay. Now, there in the slide, you can see that Igor Ansoff has been mentioned twice, once in 1965, once in 1984. Now, the years mentioned represents the book, the article, or their thesis published year. Okay, so in 1965 also Eichner has defined what strategy is, and once again one of the major definition or major explanation was given in the year 1984. There is no mistake in the slide. It is that Igor has given the definition for this particular subject twice. Now, we shall start with Alfred D. Chandler. Now, this person has given what strategy means to be in the year 1962. This person was one such person who analyzed the dynamic relationship between the business environment, organization, and that of strategies. And during his time in USA, when he was studying the organizational change, Chandler defined strategy to be the determination of the basic long term goals and objectives of the enterprise and the adoption of the course of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. So, from this definition, we can understand that Sandler had tried to explain what strategy is to be in the most simple possible way. He tells that we can call something to be strategy when it includes the long term object objects or long term goals and objectives of the organization, and also it includes the different activities that the organization will have to take to accomplish all these long term activities and objectives, and also it shall speak about how the resources shall be allocated for carrying out these objective and goals. So this is what strategy is for Alfred D. Chandler. I'll quote him once again: the determination of the basic long term goals and objectives of an enterprise and the adoption of the courses of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. Unquote. Okay, let us now see the definition of Kenneth Andrews. Now, Kenneth Andrews, he belonged to a group of professors who contributed a lot in developing business policy as a subject, as a knowledge. And he defined strategy as, I quote, the pattern of objectives, purpose, goals, and the major policies and plans for achieving these goals stated in such a way so as to define what business the company is in or is to be and the kind of company it is or is to be. Now, if we compare what Chandler said and what Andrews said, now Andrews is speaking that strategy includes all the patterns, the objectives, the goals, the purpose, and it should also include the major policies through which the company shall achieve all its goals. And in doing so, the strategy should be able to tell what is the kind of business that the organization is doing, and also what kind of business does it want to do in the future, what kind of company is it, and what kind of company it wants to be in the future. So here he is trying to tell what company is currently doing and how does it wants to see itself in the future. Okay. Next, in the same year, Igor Ansoff, he explained corporate strategy. He said that the corporate strategy is a common thread among the organization's activities and product markets, and that defines the essential nature of business that the organization was or planned to be in the future. Now, this is exactly the same definition what is given by Andrews, but then Ansoff He is also speaking about the relationship between the market and the activities that the business organization does. So now, if we see all this definition, what we can understand is what strategy is all about is that it tells what business we are into and what is that we want to be in the coming years. And in this way of becoming what we want to be in the future, there are certain objectives that the organization has to fulfill. And the policies that shall be taken to fulfill all these objectives are nothing but what strategy is. Now, after this, in the year 72, William F. Gluck, he discussed strategy as now strategy is something a unified, comprehensive, and integrated plan designed to assure that the basic objectives of the enterprise are achieved. Now, Gluck, he has put a lot of importance, if you closely observe, on the three terms, that is unified, comprehensive, and integrated. And he has used all these words to describe a plan. Now here this unified. Now unified refers to connecting. Now the question is connecting what? Connecting all the divisions of an enterprise with one another. We can consider that as unification. Now the next term that he has used is comprehensive. What does comprehensive mean? Now, comprehensive means it should be including all the critical aspects of the organization. And the one more word is integrated. Now, integrating means making all components, each and every distinct components of a plan to assimilate with one another or to combine with one another. So, even though Gluck's definition is of one sentence, it always and it includes a wider meaning of what strategy means. So, I'll quote Gluck once again. Strategy is a unified, comprehensive, and integrated plan designed to assure that the basic objectives of enterprise are achieved. Okay. Now, once again in the year 1984, Ansoff has given a definition where he has explained what corporate strategy is. Now he tells that it is a set of decision making rules for the guidance of organizational behavior. Now earlier he spoke about how strategy is, you know, a bridge between the organization and organizational activities and the product markets. Now, once again, when he has given the definition, he is speaking that strategy is decision making rules and it also guides the organizational behavior. And in the year 87, it was Henry Mintzberg who explained what strategy is. Now, Mintzberg was of the opinion that these strategies they need not necessarily come from logical planning, but then there are chances that they may also result from something which is unplanned. And in telling so, he defines strategy as, a pattern in a stream of decision and actions. So, in telling so, he also tries to differentiate between intended and emergent strategies, or the things which are planned and the strategies that are unplanned in the organization. So, when we tell intended, intended strategies, it refers to all those plans that the manager, the management, or the company develops. And when we tell emergent strategies, it relates to the activities that actually happens in the organization. That is to tell what has been planned and what actually happens can be two different set of things sometimes, or when it comes to business world, most of the times it would definitely be two different set of activities. The what actually was planned would be something different from what has actually happened. So an organization therefore may begin with a planned and calculated design of strategy and result in another strategy that is in reality what has been realized. So this is the opinion of Henry Mintzberg. And the last one we shall see what does Michael E. Porter wants to say about strategy. Now, the contribution of this person in conceptualizing what strategy is of immense value. Now, this person, that is Michael E. Porter, he is very well known for his ideas on, you have heard his name when we discussed regarding competitive advantage, we discussed his five force model, we have discussed his generic strategy, and also his opinion regarding value chain. And when he had to, you know, speak about strategy, he discussed strategy as the locus of general management, and he defines it as, developing and communicating the company's unique position, making trade offs, and forging fit among activities. So, what does that mean? When he tells developing and communicating the company's unique position, making trade offs, and forging fit among activities. Now, this strategic position it is based on customers' needs, customers' accessibility, or the assortment of products, and also the different kinds of services that are offered by the organization to its customers. So, a company, in order to build a competitive advantage, has to work always on creating a unique proposition, or what we call as USP when it comes to marketing terms. And it tries to create this unique proposition, by selecting among different distinct actions from that has already been planned or which is there in its counterparts, or also by executing similar activities in different ways. However, in order to get a sustainable strategic position, companies should always try to create a fit of activities by trade off between different activities so that they can always ensure that they relate all these activities that they are doing, it relates to one another. Now trade offs is nothing but uh, some compromise should always be done on two different things. That is to tell, now the best example is uh, with regard to profit maximization or wealth maximization of the company. Now, there is always a trade off. Or when we consider risk and return, there is always a trade off between these two. And in the same way, when it comes to achieving the strategic goals of the organization, between two counterparts, there shall always be trades off. That is what Michael E. Porter is trying to put up. Now, all this work of all authors that we discussed as of now, these are the attempts to define the concept of strategy with much clarity and precision. So, this is how, now, if you see from the year 62 to 96, each definition that was given was something where it started to include more and more concepts of business within the scope of what strategy is. So this is about evolution of strategy that we discussed from the point of view of different authors. So the next topic is levels of strategy. Now, Now, as soon as we hear levels of strategy, it definitely means that our organization is not confined to one strategy. It has many strategies. Now, that is to tell in an organization, a single strategy shall always be inadequate. In fact, organization always needs multiple strategies, and not only that it has to have multiple strategy, it has to have this strategy in different levels. Now when we say different levels, um, it is nothing but maybe in terms of functional level, in terms of business level, corporate level. It will have to have different kinds of strategies for each of the level. Now, in order to divide different units or segment, now each performing a common set of activities, many companies create operating divisions. Now, these operating divisions, they are most of the time, they are referred to profit centers, or in corporate world, it is described as SBU or strategic business unit. Now, each of the level or each of the subdivision, which is a key division of the organization, shall be termed as strategic business unit or SBUs. Now, if you need a definition of what SBU is, Sharplin tells that strategic business unit is any part of business organization which is treated separately for strategic management purpose. So these SBUs, they are involved in a single line of business. Now, where each of the strategic business unit will have its own functional department. Now, while the common function are grouped under corporate level, the different levels of strategy could be, you know, business level. So the overall action plan, including all the functions executed by different SBUs, they shall be discussed under corporate level strategy. So the plan which relates to the objectives of the company, the resources allocation, and the coordination of the SBUs are necessary for the best possible results. Now, speaking about this business level strategy or strategic business unit level strategy. Now, it is a complete plan which relates to specifically the objectives of each strategic business unit, and also it is regarding how the resources shall be allocated to different functional divisions, and also it includes how to bring coordination cooperation among all these different functional level units or the strategic business units so as to achieve corporate level objective. Now, one thing if we observe among this corporate level, business level, and functional level, each has its subunits, but each subunits shall be working so that its main counterparts objectives shall be achieved. So, what has been displayed in your PPT is the different levels of strategy. Here, levels of management has been taken from the perspective of external environment. Now, when we speak of levels of management and we tell it is lower level management, higher level management, and the mid level management, that we shall be dividing from the point of view of one single company organization or an business unit, wherein which the most of the things included shall be which represent the internal environment. So here when we are speaking in terms of strategic management, in terms of corporate business world, here levels of strategies normally shall be functional level strategy, business level strategy, and corporate level strategy. So in the highest uh, part of the pyramid, you have corporate office. Then from corporate office, there shall be different business level or strategic business unit. Then each of the strategic business unit will have its functional level. Now this slide that has been put up, now it has been taken from Strategic Management and Business Policy, third edition of Khazmi, which was published in the year 2010. So now we shall discuss about schools of thought on strategy formulation. Now what are these schools of thought? Now schools of thought in the base, it speaks about different ideas of one particular subject or knowledge. Now, different people, different management thinkers, they have their own idea regarding what strategy formulation is all about or what strategy is all about. Now, from that point of view, these are some different schools of thought that has been mentioned. Now we have the perspective school, the descriptive school, and the integrative school of thought. Now, under the perspective school, we have the design school, the planning school, and the positioning school. Under the descriptive school, we have the entrepreneur school, the learning school, the power school, the cultural school, and the environmental school. And under the integrative school, we have the configuration school. Now, speaking about this, the subject of strategic management, as we discussed earlier, it is still evolving. Now, in this course or in this action of its development, there are several aspects of the concept which are emerging. Now, these are gradually leading to convergence of views. So, from this, we can understand that the subject is somewhere maturing. So, it was Mintzberg or Henry Mintzberg and his associates or his colleagues, they have given these 10 schools of thought on strategy formulation. So, let us see each one of it in detail. Now, the first one is the design school. Now, this school of thought, it was developed in the late 1950s and the 1960s. Okay. Now, management thinkers like Andrews, Selznick, they perceive that strategy formulation, now it is the process of conception. So this school of thought, it looks at strategy as unique, different plans. Now it is the chief executive officer who creates and leads the strategy formulation process, and it is simple in nature and informal, and it shall always be based on judgment and thinking. So, from the word perspective itself, you can understand that here they try to think that it is not based on some accurate mathematical data or actual data, but from the point of view of how the head of the department or the manager, based on his perception, his experience, his intuition and judgment, what does he think is all about strategy formulation. So that is the idea of what strategy is all about for the design school of thought. Now, the second one in this school of thought is the planning school. Now, this particular school of thought was developed in the late 1960s. Now, Ansoff was one such person who contributed mainly to this school. And according to this school of thought, strategy formulation is a formal process. And this process, it includes, the activity of dividing strategy into smaller sub-strategies and programs. Now, the lead role in the strategy is played by planners. The process strategy formulation is formal and is also deliberate. Now, if you compare the design school and the planning school, now design school spoke that it is an informal activity. Now it only includes what the manager or the CEO wants to think about it. He comes up with the strategy and he communicates to others in the organization. Whereas planning school tells that it is a formal process. and it includes the activity of dividing this strategy into sub strategies and different other programs. And the lead role into accomplishing this activity of forming the strategy, dividing it into different programs, it is played by whom we can call as planners. And this function is always formal in nature and it is also deliberate in nature. So that is the idea behind the planning school. So the next one we have is the positioning school. Now this school of thought was developed in the late 1970s and in the 80s. Now, management thinkers like Hayton, Sheldon, and Porter was few of the management uh, thinkers who formed this positioning school. Now, all these authors they considered strategy as organization's planned position, organize, or if you have to be more specific, it is organization's planned generic position which has been selected or chosen by the analyzing competition and industry in which the particular business organization operates. And this work of strategy formulation is done by whom we refer as analysts. So the process of strategy formulation is always analytical, systematic, and deliberate. Now, this particular school of thought, it gives more importance for the fact that whenever an organization has to come up with strategy, now it should not be based on intuitions or perception, but it should be a clear plan of action which has been derived from analyzing or from understanding the competitive nature of the business and that of industry in which the particular business organization operates or functions. So now these are the three different school of thought that comes under perspective school. So the next one is from the point of view of the descriptive school of thought. Okay. And under descriptive school of thought, we have the next one that is the entrepreneurial school. Now, speaking about the development of this school of thought, it was developed in the 1950s and management thinkers like Sumter and Cole and several different people were the main contributors who considered this strategic formulation as a visionary process. So we have discussed that entrepreneur is someone who visions what the company would be. So from that point of view, this school of thought thinks that has the idea of strategy that it is a visionary process. Now this school It views strategy as a result of personal and unique perspective, and which always would be aiming at the creation of a niche. Okay, so the strategies are formulated by the entrepreneur, or we can also call him as leader, and the process of the strategy formulation is instinctive, far-sighted, and largely deliberate in nature. So that is entrepreneurial school of strategy formulation, where it is viewed as a visionary process, and it speaks that now it shall be a result of the personal and unique perspective, and it always tries to create a niche. Now, speaking about niche, what is a niche? Yes, the answer is that nobody knows. Neither would I would be telling, nor am I interested in telling it again and again. You people, some of you people having chosen marketing management as specialization, if you are unable to tell what niche is all about, that too after studying for 4 months, I mean 4 different semesters, I do not know who else can help you all in telling what niche is. If you think it is necessary, you shall do the work of understanding what niche is all by yourself this time. Okay. Now under the descriptive school, the next one is the okay. The next one is the learning school. So what is this learning school? Now, this school of thought, it emerged from 1950s and it existed through 1990s. Now, this particular school, it considers strategic formulation as, a emergent process. That is, strategy, it is seen as, unique pattern. And this process of strategy formulation is every time new, informal, and unorganized. So the strategy formulation is done by learner within the organization. So this is the basic idea of learning school. That is, every time you will have to learn something, every time the situation, the context in which the strategy has to be formulated shall be different, and every time the formation shall be new, informal, and unorganized. So some of the contributors to this school of art was Lindblom in the year 1959-1960, and Marx and Siret in 1963, Beek in 69, Quinn in 80, and also even Hamel and Prahalad in the early 1990s. Okay, there is one that has been skipped to mention, that is the cognitive school. So the cognitive school is the fifth one. Now this cognitive school, it emerged during 1940s and 1950s. And this particular school of strategic formulation, it considered strategy as individual concept. And it considered that strategic formulation is a result of the mental perspective. And the strategic formulation, it is done by a thinker, a philosopher who is responsible for what would be happening. Now, management thinkers like Simon, March were the people who contributed to cognitive school, and they considered that strategic formulation is mental and emergent process. Now, the seventh one is, and it comes under the descriptive school, it is the power school. Now, this particular school of thought, it developed during 1970s and 80s. And people who were contributing to this school of thought, they regarded strategic formulation as a negotiation process. Okay, it could be a political and a cooperative process, and they consider that the main task of strategic formulation is normally performed by anyone in the power. Okay, when anyone who has the power, when it comes to micro level or each department level, and it can also be the entire organization when it comes to macro level. So this process of strategy formulation is, if we see, it is chaotic in nature, and there are lot of chances that many a time it can lead to conflicts and kind of aggression among the employees and also lack of cooperation. The management writers like Allison, Pfeffer, and Salnick and Astley were the major contributors to this school of thought. So the next that we have is the cultural school. Now, this school of thought was developed during the late 1960s, and Rehnman and Norman were the main contributor to this school of strategic formulation. And they were of the opinion that this strategic formulation is always a collective process. That is, strategy is considered, as a unique and a collective perspective. It does not come from one single person, but it is a result of the activities and the thinking process done by each and every such person who is included in strategic formulation and also implementation. So that is to tell strategic formulation is done by collectivism display within the organization. And the process of strategic formulation is, collective, it is deliberate, it is ideologic, and also constrained in nature. And under descriptive school, one last point, approach is the environmental school. Now, even this school of strategic formulation was developed during 1960s and 1970s. And this particular school of thought, it considers strategic formulation as a reactive process. Now, reactive is something the business does once after things happen. So, this school of thought it regarded strategy as something occupying specific positions or niche or generic position in relation to that of the business environment. So, for this school of thought, strategy formulation is passive in nature. It is imposed and also emergent, That is, environment is regarded as an entity, and this school of thought it considers that the business environment plays a major role in strategy formulation. From the name itself, we can make out the ideology behind the school. So the name is the environmental school, and it does consider that the business environment plays a major role in strategy formulation. The last one is the integrative school. And under integrative school, we have the configuration school. Now, this configuration school or this school of thought, it emerged in 1960s and 1970s. And the main contributors for this school of strategic management was Chandler, Mintzberg, Chandler during 1960s, and Mintzberg and Miller during 1970s, and Miles and Snow during late 1970s. Now, this particular school of thought, it regarded, strategy as a transformational process. And in its being transformational process, strategies tries to match any process, discussed under the nine school of thought that we already discussed. Now, the process of strategy formulation, according to this configuration school of thought, is that it is always integrative and sequential in nature. And to add upon to this, this strategy could also incorporate, different other elements pointed out under the nine school of thought. So strategic management, as a broader concept of management, it considers all the managerial problems, issues, the process of solving them, and also many other variables that operate in the problem solving environment. Now, these are the different schools of thought. We have studied 10 different schools of thought. Now, one is missing, that is the cognitive school. Okay? 9 has been mentioned in the slide, and one has been, skipped to be mentioned. So please take a note. The fifth one is the cognitive school of thought. Okay. Now, before we begin with benefits and limitations of strategic management, um, now let us once again briefly see what this strategic management is. So, the strategic decision making, now it is done through the process of strategic management. So, now strategic management, we can tell it as it is a set of decisions and actions which leads to the development of an effective strategy or strategies which help to corporate objectives. Now, this was what strategy 2 Gluck. And he also tells that now it is a set of decisions and actions in formulation and implementation of strategies designed to achieve the objectives of an organization. And whereas Pierce and Robinson, they tell that this strategy it is mainly concerned with, creating a relation in the organization to that of its environment. And thereby it tries to formulate strategies and also to adapt to the environment in which it has to operate, and also it assumes the different elements that would be present there, and the implementation of the strategies takes place at last. Now, of all these management functions, now of a company, it can be broadly classified into two categories. That is, one is strategic and one is operational. Now, this strategic functions. Now, the strategic functions are performed more at the senior and top management level, and the operational functions they are performed more by middle and lower management level. Or, if I have to tell in simpler words, now as the level of management moves up, as we move higher in the pyramid, the managers perform more static function and less operational function. That is why we can tell strategic management is an art as well as science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating decisions across different functional areas, thereby helping the organization in achieving its objectives. Now, strategic management is something which focuses on, integrating management, the marketing department, the finance, the production, research and development, and even information technology to achieve the success of the organization. Now, when we speak about the business world, this particular term strategic planning or this particular word strategic management, they are normally used interchangeably. Now, this rationale of strategic management is to utilize and develop new and different opportunities for the future. So, let us now see some of the benefits and limitations of strategic management. Now, once again, I'll not be providing you with any kind of study material. So, if you need the information, take it down. Now, I know it's already 1. I shall continue for 15 to 20 more minutes. Then I shall leave you all for the day. So have patience so that we can finish off with the benefits and limitations. Now speaking about benefits, once again benefits can be of two types. It can be financial benefits. It can also be non-financial benefits for an organization. Now, this is a very well known fact that strategic management it shall allow organizations to shape their own destinies, by becoming more proactive than being reactive. Now, proactive is something where you analyze what might happen and you make your business organization to, ready to face all that would be happening in the future. Now, what happens in the future could be anything. Uh, you know, a new opportunity that a business can utilize, or it can also be a threat which the business has to tackle very well. And reactive is such a thing wherein you wait until something happens, and once after the action is completed, based on what happens, you would be formulating. And in today's business world, an organization can only be successful when it is proactive in nature. Now, this strategic management it allows organization to start and influence activities so that it can control its own future. So, the major advantage of strategic management is nothing but to help the organization to formulate better strategies. And a strategy can only be better when organizations formulate all these strategies in a methodical and a rational approach. Now, one key focus of strategic management is to you know to make an attempt in understanding of and also commitment from all managers and employees. Now, if the employees of the organization are unable to understand the strategy, or if they are unable to commit themselves to this strategy, then no matter how good the strategy of the organization is formulated, there shall be no use when it is implemented. So, understanding is probably one of the most important benefits of strategic management, which shall be followed by commitment. Now, in cases where employees and managers understand what the organization is doing and why the organization is doing, they often feel they are part of the firm and they normally become committed to assisting it. So this also enables employees to understand the links between their own compensation and also organizational performance. Now, one more benefit of strategic management is that it empowers the individual. Now, empowerment means strengthening employees' sense of effectiveness by involving them in decision making and also to exercise initiative and imagination and rewarding them for putting all these kinds of effort thereon. Now, I mentioned, financial benefits and non-financial benefits. Now, there are lot of research which has been done. So all this research, now they indicate that strategic management, it normally helps organization to become more and more successful and also to become more profitable than its counterparts or than its competitors. So, systematic planning always prepares organization for different uncertain future. And also, when a planning is done systematically, it normally shows better financial performance in comparison to the industry. And also, such enterprises they are also expected to make more informed decisions by understanding both short and long term consequences. So, having said this, the strategic management practice it might help company in bringing financial benefits in the way of first one is in through the way of increased sales through the way of improved profitability and also it helps in enhancing the productivity. Now, having said these three words, say sales, profitability, and productivity. Now, sales you definitely do know, but what is this profitability and productivity? Now, this is do it yourself for you all for the coming class. So, when you would be attending your classes on Wednesday, I would want somebody among you to tell me what is productivity, what is profitability. Now, is there any kind of difference among two? Whether they are two different things? Do they complement each other? Or is it a trade off between these two? For your next class, this is the work that you have to do, that you should be able to tell me what is productivity, what is profitability. So, to mention once again, if we have to point out the financial benefits, the first one is it increases sales. The second one it is there shall be improved profitability, and also it enhances profitability. Sorry, productivity. Now, not only does it increases the financial benefits, now there are lot of benefits for the organization in implementing strategic management, which comes in the way of, in non-financial way. Now, this non-financial way, it normally would be intangible in nature. Okay. Now, when you try to implement strategies or the strategic management, the organization, first and foremost, it will have enhanced awareness of all the external threats that is present in the environment. And also, it would help in improving and understanding of the competitive strategies that the organization could have. It tries to bring, employee productivity higher. It tries to resist any kinds of changes from the side of the employees, and it tries to, understand the relationship between performance of the employee and the rewards of the employees. It also tries to promote, interaction among managers at various divisional and functional levels uh, by increasing, what we call as the problem prevention capacities. And strategic management also encourages to bring order and discipline in the organization. And it also creates what we call as efficient and effective managerial system. It tries to establish, a kind of, a kind of confidence in the current business strategy, and also it tries to highlight the different needs for corrective measures. Now, the strategic management, it also provides, basis for identifying and rationalizing the need for change. It also helps the employees to view these different changes as an opportunity for the organization. Now, having said it in brief, if I have to tell, about the non-financial benefits, um, the first one is, Um, strategic management, it permits organization, to identify, to prioritize and exploit the opportunities which would be present for it in its business environment. Um, and the second one is that it gives an unbiased and also real picture of all the managerial problems that exists in the organization. That is, total strategic management is definitely a objective based way of thinking. Now, third one is it provides guidelines to increase coordination and also stimulate control of activities in the organization. Not only does it, enhances all this, but also it helps in reducing the impact of the different adverse conditions and also changes in the business environment. Now, strategic management also helps in taking good decisions to support established objectives of the organization, and also it allows effective allocation of resources. Not only effective allocation of resources, it will also help in timely allocation of resources to the opportunities which are being identified. And when it does all these things, if we observe, it also helps in reducing the wastage of resources and time. Now, strategic management is also one such thing which encourages a better internal communication in the business unit. Now, it also tries to combine or integrate the behavior of the individuals into total effort. Now, it defines clear individual responsibilities also. Now, the strategic management, it promotes forward thinking. Now, it provides, you know, cooperative and integrated approach to deal with the problems and the opportunities of the organization. And last but not least, it tries to create discipline in the management of a business. So now there are lot of benefits that we discussed, but even after having so much benefits or after having so much advantages, there's still some drawbacks. There are still some problems with this strategic management. The main thing it happens is because strategic management and this planning undoubtedly is a complex process. So some of the limitations there are is that, you know, first and foremost is, in analyzing the complex and the dynamic environment. Now, why is there any kind of difficulty in analyzing this complex and dynamic environment? Mainly the thing is, with the environment, complete information or detail on how there would be some kind of environmental changes, including market and competitors, they are hardly available. So, companies have to act on incomplete information or incomplete database. So, that is the first and the foremost limitation that strategic management has to face. Now, second one is that yes, we tell plans, we tell frameworks, we tell system that it is better. All these things are, help organization in realizing its goal. But when a company has all these things, it simply means it tries to bring a rigidity into the organization. That is to tell we have come up with a plan, this plan shall be implemented. And after that, we tell that we'll have to analyze the implemented plan and we'll have to see to that it is going according to what has been thought of. If not, we have to take steps so that it moves along with the idea what has been come up with. So, even though there are different opportunities in the environment, when you have accepted certain plans, you would be not having any kind of flexibility to move away from that. So, the strategic planning or management, it reduces flexibility and also the individual initiatives that can be taken. Now, all systems imply certain amount of rigidity, undoubtedly. And the third limitation is, limitation in implementation. That is still, our organization, it might be able to come up with strategy, a well conceived one, a well formulated one. But then there may be lot of problems in implementation, which might arise from, as normal as such things like internal conflict or lack of coordination among the employees or lack of coordination among the departments, or also it can arise from lack of support from the top management. So strategy can be very well formulated, but the implementation, it shall face a lot of problems. Now, the uh, fourth major problem that we can see is, normally there shall be inadequate appreciation by the management. That is to tell, the planning and executing teams, they may not get adequate appreciation or even reward from the top management when their strategies succeed. This is for sure. If the company is able to earn more and more, uh, the ones who have come up with the plans and implemented, they might not be appreciated to the extent that has to be done. But if at all the cases that it has failed, then management may not accept the situation. So this often discourages the initiative and also the new thinking which can be done from the side of the employees in the organization. Now, not only these major limitations, but also there can be certain other limitations, such as, this strategic management. It can be used to get control over decision and resources by those who have power. Now, there are chances that the top managers, they may not actively support the strategic planning process. There are also chances that these top managers, they take independent decisions which conflict with the strategic planning process. Um, these top managers, they might fail to inform the plan to their employees, and then even there is this problem that if at all the planning is delegated to some third party or a planner rather than including the concerned managers, plans would be different. How it actually operates would be something different. Now there are chances that they might fail to involve, important managers or employees in different stages of this process. They may fail to make use of plan as a standard for measuring performance, or there are chances that in organizations sometimes it happens so that they might view planning to be an unnecessary exercise or an unimportant exercise, or it might fail to generate a good climate in the organization which might support the changes for good, or there are also chances that it can be very formal in planning and completely overlooking the flexibility or the creativity that has to be there in planning. Now, having said this, these are some of the benefits and limitation of strategic management.